All right. Now, what I want to talk about for a moment, first of all, in last week's portion, for those of you who okay, thank you. In last week's portion, for those of you who didn't listen to the 6-minute video, I do recommend the 6-minute video. It talks about forgiveness, and I think you may be inspired by it, so I'm just recommending you look at it. It was based upon, related to Yosef not bearing a grudge against his brothers. But we're going to talk about Parshat Vayechi. But before we talk about Parshat Vayechi, I do want to explain something to you. Open up for a second to Parshat Vayechi, and I want you to appreciate what a Torah reader does when he reads in the synagogue. Parshat Vayechi is the last portion in Chumash Bereshis, the book of Genesis, and it's found on page 268 in your handy art scroll. Okay. All right. Who's that cutie pie in the picture there? Who is that? I can't hear it.
Oh, this is Aunt Millie's great nephew.
Oh, okay. Aunt Millie's great nephew.
Say hi.
Hello. Starting him young and Parsha. I like it. All right. So I'm going to read the first verse using the cantillation of the notes that the readers use to read the Torah. All right. And how do I know how to read it? Because each of the little swiggles and lines have a tune to them. For example, under the word Vayechi on page 268, there's a little arrow there. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim Shiva Esrei Shana Vayehi Yemei Yaakov Shnei Chayav Sheva Shanim Ve'arbaim U'ma'at Shana. Okay, so I just read it how the Torah reader would read it. Now, you should appreciate how the Torah reader reads it, because in the Torah, there are no swiggles and there are no vowels. So I'm going to show that to you here. And this is a book, the book that I have in my hand is called Etikun. And what it is it's to help the reader practice to read the Torah. So it has 2 columns. I'm describing it. I'll get there. I don't expect you to have binoculars. Take it easy. It has 2 columns, and the 2 columns, one has. I was a computer whiz. I could do this easily for the people on Zoom. I'm not, so I'll do the best that I can. Don't know what I'm doing. No, okay. I'm trying to make it a full screen. The gallery all?
Usually, I don't see the setting.
Oh, all right. I don't hear here. I'll show you one.
Usually it's over here. I don't see it.
Oh, there's the view.
Yeah, this one here, maybe. Yeah,
No, that's anyone who's speaking. Okay. It's back to that.
I think this one.
No, it's like 2 for me. Okay, I'll go back.
First one.
Hello? Okay, I'll let it be. Okay. I don't know. Like I said, so it's 2 columns, and the first one has all the vowels and the cantillation, how to read it. The second one just has it like it's printed in the Torah. So I'm going to walk around and show you that to you for a second. I'll tell you why I'm doing that soon. Okay. On the right, it has all the vowels and cantillations. On the left, it's like a photo copy of the photo scroll. I think it doesn't have.
Why does each writer of the Torah have variations in their fonts, or is there a standardized must?
Excellent question. Excellent question. You see, one side has the letters and the vowels, and one that doesn't have anything. This is like the Torah scroll looks like this.
There's nothing on the bottom. So you don't know what's not at the bottom.
And you don't know where to stop and where to go. Question I don't know if you could have heard is, does each sofer, the scribe, have his own style? And the answer is no. I mean, there are mild variations, but it's a Ksav Ashuris. It's very exact how the letters have to be written, exactly how when there's extra points on top and not. It's a very meticulous type of writing. So it's a special type of writing, and it's not, you can't just say, hey, let me try a little creative font thing here. No, you can't. Okay, so now if you'll notice, on the page that I'm holding up, there is gaps, little spaces, you see white spaces between? That you'll usually have when there's a certain break in the action. Between portions, you'll have a break. This week, there is no break at all, except a letter, the space of a letter. So Vayigash ends, and Vayechi starts, and you don't see the break. So the commentators are going to talk about that. So we will talk about that in a minute. So I just wanted to mention that, wanted you to see it up close first. So before we start, I want to mention something. How many Torahs are there? 2. Why 2? The written and the oral, correct. Okay. So, for example, on the Parsha facts, I give you outline. Yaakov's final request and explanation. Blessings of Menashe and Ephraim, switching of hands, Yaakov's blessing of the 12 tribes, Yaakov's death. There's a lot of information on the outline. Did everyone get an outline? Yes, but a lot of information, but it doesn't tell you all the details. So the written Torah that we have is that's the details. That's the outline. The oral Torah gives us the details. There are many examples of this. For example, the holiday of Sukkot, we take four species to wave. So what the written Torah says for the fruit, it's pre-Eitz Hadar, a beautiful fruit. That's all it says in the written Torah. Now we know from the oral Torah that doesn't mean Shlomo Zul can use an orange and Tesha can use a banana. And no, it's a citron, it's a certain fruit. But that we know from the oral Torah how we derive that out. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? So the written Torah is the outline, and the oral Torah fills in the details. This week's portion is a classic example of that, because I'm going to show you certain things in the text that on their own are very hard to understand. What does he mean by that? All right, so the first thing we're going to begin with is what I mentioned, and that is that normally there's a gap in the Torah scroll when the last portion ends and the new portion begins. But this week there is no gap at all, and the question is why. So Rashi, the premier commentary on the Torah, gives us two answers for that. Answer number one has to do with that after Yaakov's death, which is going to occur in this portion, the hearts of the Jewish people were closed, meaning to say things began to get a little bit uncomfortable in Egypt. It was the beginning of the end, if you will, or the beginning of the exile on a lighter way. Okay, so that's one reason why this portion is closed. There's no gap. Again, you're not going to see that in the text because it's in the Torah scroll the way it's written, that there's no spacing like I showed you before. The other reason is that Yaakov wanted to tell this was going to be the beginning of the exile, and Yaakov represents the forefather who the Jewish people were in exile with. Yaakov ended up spending a lot of his life out of the land of Israel. And Yaakov is now, we're beginning now with the Jewish people going down into Egypt and going to be stuck there in servitude. So he wanted to reveal to them when the final redemption would be. And God didn't allow him to do that. So it was blocked from him. So again, the portion is blocked because he wasn't able to reveal it when. Now there is an interesting commentary about it that Yaakov saw how long it would take, and he became sad, and therefore he lost the ability to have prophecy because of his sadness. So, but that's a side point. The point was that God did not want us to know at that time when the end of days would be, when the final redemption would be. So Yaakov, yes,
Could I just interrupt you for a moment, Rabbi?
can.
I would like today's class dedicated to the memory of Yisrael Michal ben Moshe Elia Irwin. It's his yurtzeit tonight,
Oh,
third year.
Man, and I'm honored to be able to have the class dedicated to his memory. May his soul be elevated. Very special man. And we miss him. So thank you for mentioning. Yeah. Okay. So Yaakov lived in Egypt 17 years. He was happy the divine presence was with him. And he saw that he was getting old. He was 147 years old, and he called his son Yosef, and he wanted him to make him a promise. Why is he calling Yosef? Because Yosef has the ability to do what he's requesting. What is he requesting? He's requesting that he does not want to be buried in Egypt. Why not? He wants to be buried back in the land of Canaan. Anywhere in particular? In Hebron, in the cave of Machpelah, right? And that's where he wants to be buried. Why does he want to be buried in Egypt? Number one, he's afraid they're going to make him into an idol. Because when Yaakov came down, the plague stopped, the hunger stopped. Number two, he didn't want to be in Egypt when the plagues that were coming were going to be there. So, but interestingly, he uses an interesting term. He says, "Please do do a kindness and truth with me is how the article translates it. Chesed ve'emes. Now, why is that called a kindness and truth? So interestingly enough, the loving kindness we do with the dead, that is called chesed shel emes, a loving kindness of truth. Why is that called a loving kindness of truth? Because in real life, very good. In real life, if I do you a favor, maybe you'll do me back a favor, right? Or if, but when you're doing something with the deceased on this world, they can't do anything back because they're not alive anymore. That's one interpretation of what means of chesed shalem. As a matter of fact, that mitzvah is used to term for people who volunteer and don't get paid to prepare the body for burial. It's a very beautiful, very powerful mitzvah of being part of the Chevra Kadisha, the holy group that takes care of preparing a body properly for death. That is a beautiful thing, and that's a chesed shalemes because again, in many communities, there are people who volunteer for this, men for men, women for women, and it's a very beautiful, beautiful mitzvah. There's another interpretation of what chesed shalemes is, and that's, I think, very relevant to us all the time. But I'm going to give you an example. 5-year-old boys don't always want to go to school. I don't know if you've ever witnessed something like this. Many adults don't want to go to school, right? So especially after a vacation, some of the kids are crying. So I had a mother who brought her child to my classroom and so I told her, Mom, you're welcome to stay outside the room as long as you want, but when you want me to peel him off you, when you're ready, I will take him into class and, you know, he'll survive and everything will be fine in a little bit because all the other kids are inside already. No, he's going to come. I said, okay, take your time, you know. So eventually I come out and say, you want, no, okay. So eventually she had to go and I had to peel him off her and brought him into class. And another parent walked by and said, are you happy now? The son's crying, the mother's crying. Are you happy now? I say, yes, I torture parents all the time. That's my job. So was I being mean to the child by peeling him off his mother? Why not? The kid needed to be in school, you know. You want to take him home and not send him to school so that he never cries, fine. The kid cries for I want the candy now. So you have to have supper first. No, I want the candy now. You have to have supper first, you know. So there's chesed, there's loving kindness that isn't emes. It's not truthful. It's not good. But sometimes people do that. On a more relevant term, ceasefire in Israel, in Gaza. Who should be against that? Sounds like a very good idea. Make a ceasefire. But it's not thought through because if the idea is to stop Hamas, then the ceasefire doesn't do anything. It just, you know, besides that, they could have given up they would have had a much stronger bargaining chip for a ceasefire if they gave out all the hostages. But they're looking to trade and get people back. But ceasefire, it's a terrible humanitarian crisis. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure it is a humanitarian crisis. It's a terrible thing. War is a terrible thing. But is that real chesed when you're trying to ceasefire? Not if you're trying to get rid of them. But by the way, no one's calling for that when Syria was gassing their own people, when the Russians are killing the Ukrainians. And it just really, the UN wasn't speaking.
I found this on the check it out.
I'm sorry? Okay. In any event, so the point I'm saying is chesed shalemis means a loving kindness that is really a loving kindness. That's an authentic loving kindness, not what appears to be a kindness, but really is not. You know, a guy can't afford to buy drugs, and you're giving money for drugs. Making him feel better. He's upset. That's not a chesed shalem. So this is a very important interpretation, and that's, by the way, why we need a Torah to tell us what is really right and what is wrong. Because on our own, we come to our own conclusions about it, and that isn't really what is a real chesed. So Yosef agrees to Yaakov's request, and he promises him, makes a vow that he will not bury him here and allow him to be buried with his forefathers, where Avrohom and Yitzchak were buried, and his wife Leah. And what does Yaakov do? He bows to his bed. He bows to the bed to be grateful to God, who's at the head of a bed when someone is sick, and to bow to be grateful to God that his bed is complete, that all of his children are righteous, and even though he's a king living among non-Jews, he still maintained his righteousness, which is very, very special. Yosef finds out that Yaakov is feeling even weaker and not well, so he brings his two sons, Menashe and Ephraim, to get a blessing from their father Yaakov. Yes.
This and Israel frustrated himself towards the head of the bed. What does that mean?
Means he bowed to the head of the bed. So he was thanking God for his bed being complete. That
Israel is that
Yaakov. Remember Yaakov in Israel? He got two names. Sometimes he's referred to as Yaakov, sometimes he's referred to as Yisrael. And the Yisrael is the upper level, the higher level of Yaakov. So he's being grateful that he that his bed is complete, that all of his children are righteous. Yaakov hears that Yosef is coming, so he sits up in the bed to give his son respect, because he is a viceroy, he is a king, and he brings his sons in. And he says something very powerful to Yosef. He says, I'm going to give I'll make you fruitful and numerous. I'll make you a congregation of nations. I'll give you this land to the offspring after you, eternal possessions. And now your two sons who were born to you in Egypt before my coming to you in Egypt shall be mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine like Reuven and Shimon. So Yaakov is counting Ephraim and Manasseh, his grandchildren, Yosef's two sons, as being part of the tribes. That's amazing. Now, what usually happens is, just to give you the technical aspect of it, is that when Levi is not counted, because Levi has a separate category, so then there's still 12 tribes. Let's say when the Jewish people travel. So in the middle was the Mishkan, the tabernacle. We'll learn about this in a few months. And the Kohanim lived around that, and the Levim lived around that. And then there were 3 tribes on each side. 1 second, 3 times 4, 12. But Levi is in the middle. How could it be 12? Because instead of having 1 for Yosef, we have Ephraim and Manasseh. Everybody with me? Everyone get it? So his two grandchildren, Manasseh and Ephraim, he's including them as being part of the 12 tribes. You didn't get it, Roya?
That's going to become 13.
Ta-da! You're a math whiz. That's amazing. So you are right. 13 is the hidden number of how many tribes there are. But generally, we say 12 because Levi sometimes is not counted. For example, in the land of Israel, when the land is divvied up, Shevet Levi didn't have their own big parcels of land. They had cities, but didn't have their own parcels of land. But the land was still divided up into 12 parts because instead of Yosef having one, it was Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay? But you're right, there is an aspect of 13 there, which is for another discussion another time. Now, there's a fascinating payback Remember, we mentioned God is CPA, the ultimate celestial payback accountant. There's a fascinating payback. How many tribes were there going to be born? 12. If you recall, Leah had 6 boys, and then she was expecting, right? What did she request?
Not to be a-
She said that if she doesn't want it to be a boy, why? So that Rachel will have at least 2 like Bilhah and Zilpah, the maidservants. Everyone remembering what I'm talking about? Yeah? Okay. So what happened? She had Dinah. Then Dinah had a whole terrible story of Shechem attacking her, having a child. Who was that child? That child was the one that came down to Mitzrayim, who ended up marrying Yosef. So Leah was giving up a tribe so that Rachel should have, but now her descendant has 2 tribes coming from her, Ephraim and Manasseh. Everybody with me? Yes, you understand what I'm saying? The woman that Yosef married was not Potiphar's daughter. It was an adopted daughter. It was really Dinah's daughter. Asnas. So Leah, for giving up having one of the tribes, ends up having 2 from her great grandchildren, right? Which is very, very special. Now I'm going to read an interesting pasuk here, and so as I mentioned in page 271, Ephraim and shall be mine like Reuben and Shimon, but progeny born to you after this shall be yours. They will be cleared under the names of their brothers with regard to their inheritance. But as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died on me in the land of Canaan on the road, while there was still a stretch of land to go to Ephrat, and I buried her there on the road to Ephrat, which is Beis Lechem. What does that have to do with anything? Again, he's in the middle of telling him about that his sons would be tribes, and then he talks about he was traveling from Padan and Rachel died, and they buried on the road to Ephrat by Beis Lechem. Why is he mentioning this? And again, this is where the oral Torah comes and explains, very important. Yaakov is saying to himself and to Yosef, you are asking me to take you all the way from Egypt to be buried in Hebron in the cave of Machpelah. But I didn't do it to your mother. And you might be wondering, why didn't you take mom there? And I'm letting you know now, it wasn't because the weather was bad. It wasn't because it was too far. It was all part of a calculation that I should bury her in Beis Lechem, because centuries later, when the Jewish people are going to be exiled to Babylon, they're going to go by the tomb of Rachel in Bethlehem, in Beis Lechem. And they're going to pray there that they should be able to come back to the land. And Rachel, the soul of Rachel, is going to go to God and say, God, let the Jews return. Now, the patriarchs are going to try pleading to God, and God's going to say, no, they sinned. Why should they go back? And then Rachel's argument is your sensitivity greater than mine? Because what happened with Rachel? Remember, Rachel gave up the signs to her sister Leah, so Leah wouldn't be embarrassed. And it allowed her husband Yaakov to be shared with Leah. So she said, I went out of my way and I allowed Leah to be sharing my husband with me. And you can also, God, you should also, and what God's response to Leah is, you don't have to cry anymore. You win. I will let the Jewish people return to the land of Israel. So Yaakov is not just haphazardly bringing in a story here about why Leah was where she was, he's explaining why he didn't take her to the cave of Machpelah, but rather buried her there by the road to Beis Lechem. And that's, you go there today, by the way, you can go today. I don't know if during the war situation you're allowed to go to Beis Lechem, but if you go to Israel, I do recommend visiting it. I always find it to be a very moving place to pray by Cave of Rachel. So, so I hope this was a little more clear about why he had to bury her there. That's correct. He had a prophecy that's why that would be the place where she should be buried, because the Jewish people are going to have to travel by and pray there. By the way, it's so interesting talking again about God keeping tabs on what was Leah's greatest prayer? What did Leah want the most?
Respect.
I'm sorry?
Respect.
From
Yeah.
Yaakov, right? And what did Rachel want? What did she pray for most? The children, right? So what ends up happening? Leah is the one who ends up being buried next to Yaakov. Her prayer is answered. She's the wife next to Yaakov. And Rachel is the one who we call Mama Rachel, Mother Rachel. I mean, Leah is also our mother, and that's the place that people mostly go to pray, more so than by Leah. So they each got, in a sense, what they davened for, which is very, very beautiful. If you have questions on what I'm saying, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay. So he brings Menashe and Ephraim to him, and as is the custom, the older one, Menashe, is going to go on the right of Yaakov, so that Yaakov's right hand will be on him, and Ephraim, the younger one, will be on the left of Yaakov, which is, by the way, the opposite. It'll be Yosef's right and Yaakov's left, and so that this way they're facing each other. But curiously, Yaakov, who couldn't see well, switches hands. He puts his right hand onto Ephraim and his left hand onto Menashe. And Yosef says, no, the older one. And Yaakov says, don't worry, my son. I know about older sons, younger sons. I'm well aware of it. But Menashe has some great people who come out, but Ephraim has Yehoshua, Joshua, the premier student of Moshe, who will lead the Jewish people into the land of Israel. So he deserves to have the right hand.
Joshua comes from Jesus.
No, from Ephraim. That's why he got the right hand. Yeah. And he gives him a beautiful bracha. And he says, Hamalach hagoel osimi kol ra. This is something we say at night. The angel who, meaning God, who blessed before me, Yevarach HaSanarim should bless the children, V'yikar v'hem shemi, and they should call in my name, B'shem Avaisa, in the name of my forefathers, Avrohom v'Yitzchak, v'yidgul ro b'karev aretz, and they should become great in the land. And he gives them a beautiful bracha. Now, and something else that he does is he says, so he blessed them that day, saying, by you shall Israel bless, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Menashe. And he put Ephraim before Menashe. And in fact, there's a custom in many Jewish homes where the fathers bless their sons to be like Ephraim and Menashe. Why Ephraim and Menashe? First of all, by girls we say they should be like Avrohom, Yitzchak, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, like the matriarchs. But by boys we say like Ephraim and Menashe. Why Ephraim and Menashe? For two reasons. Number one is they got along with each other, even though one was could have been slighted because the right hand was given to the younger one and the left hand was given to the older one. They got along, and that was a blessing that Yaakov wanted his children to, his descendants to have. And number two, they were raised in Egypt, and they still maintain their values. And unfortunately, as we mentioned, Yaakov is the forefather that represents the Jew in exile, and he's the Jew in exile, and his descendants will be in exile. He wants them to be able to maintain who they are even when they're in exile, and that's why Ephraim and Manasseh represent that. So that's one of the reasons why we bless our sons to be like Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay. The next part of the parsha deals with Yaakov calling all of the Shvatim, all of the tribes, and giving them a individual and collective blessing. And if you look at the text, I just want to show you the Chumash text. Very little text, a lot of commentary. Because again, there's so much in the oral Torah that explains what's going on here. And each one is given, and some of you may have seen, if you look at a beautiful ark in the shul downstairs, and here's a sampling of it, the symbols for each of the tribes that each tribe had, most of them come from the blessings that Yaakov gave. So you have
So what is that text that has the oral Torah written in? What is the oral Torah?
there's the Mishnah and there's the Talmud, which is combined makes the Gemara. Actually, the Gemara and the combined makes the Talmud, and then there's also the Medrash. That's also part of the oral Torah. The Zohar. There's a lot of different volumes of it. So it talks about Yehuda being a lion or Dan being a snake. It's like a lot of Yisachar being a donkey, Zevulun being boats. It's just a lot of symbolism of different things here. Now, the reason why Yehuda is like a lion is because the lion is like the king of the jungle, and Yehuda, the descendants of Yehuda, will be the ones where the kings come from. There's a very beautiful interpretation on one aspect of what it says by Yehuda that I'd like to share. It says red eye from wine and white tooth from milk. That there's going to be a lot of abundance of wine and milk in his portion. But our sages say that making someone smile or giving someone a smile is greater than giving them a cup of milk. Because again, white tooth from milk, the idea is, the allusion to is the importance of giving people a smile. So imagine someone gave you a cup of milk every single day. Wow, it'd be so nice. A smile is better than that. So that's something our sages learn out from this idea. Yisachar and Zevulun, very interesting about them. They had a very beautiful relationship. Yisachar is a donkey because he carries the Torah. They were scholars. And Zevulun he went on the seashores. He had boats, and he was a businessman. And the land in Israel was by the seashore. And Yisachar and Zvulun had a beautiful relationship. Yisachar said, "I will study my Torah," and Zvulun, who will also study Torah, but his main occupation is to be a merchant. They will have an arrangement. Zvulun will give half of his money to Yisachar, and Yisachar will give the merit of half his Torah study to Zvulun. So they exchanged, and there are some people, by the way, who do this kind of deal today. It's not that common, but it is a beautiful idea of exchanging, where you get a credit for supporting somebody in the study of Torah. Done will be a serpent on the highway. They bites a horse's heel, so the rider falls back forward. What does that mean? And what it's referring to is a descendant of Dan, which is Shimshon. Shimshon was Samson, the strong. Long story with him, but the story with him was that he had strength, unbelievable strength, and he used it to protect the Jewish people and to fight off the Philistines. And they were constantly trying to figure out what it was, how he was able to be so strong, and that had to do with that he was a Nazirite and he didn't cut his hair, and they sent a woman to try to entice him, and eventually he did reveal what it was. And what ended up happening was his hair is cut and he's now weak, and they finally were able to capture him. And the Philistines made a whole big party, and they blinded him and attached him to big pillars of a building where they were celebrating Shimshon's defeat. And what he did was he prayed for his strength to come back one last time. And Hashem granted his prayer, and he pulled the building down and destroyed many of the Plishtim, and he himself unfortunately died as well. But he one last time saved the Jewish people from the Philistines, because they were celebrating and partying. They finally got Shimshon, who was their enemy, and crashed the building down and saved the Jews again by killing many of the Philistines. So like a snake who's trying to get to the rider, he bites the horse to get the rider to fall so he can get to the rider. That's what Shimshon did from the tribe of Dan. So again, like I said, there's a lot of symbolism in what's going on in the Parsha.
Is there a spiritual meaning to Shimshon's story, or is it physical alone?
Well, there's always a spiritual meaning to everything going on, but I think what's for us, it's that he had his priority about trying to defend the Jewish people, and that ultimately is what he was able to accomplish. So Yaakov finally passes away, and he's mourned by everyone in Egypt. Yosef tells Pharaoh, "I promised that I have to bring him up," and they do bring him up. They carry him. They make a whole procession. Interestingly enough, the tribes are carrying the box with Yaakov in it, like they would travel in the desert many years, hundreds of years later, 3 on each side, and brings him to the Maras HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah, and there's a problem. There's somebody blocking the road. It's Esav. Esav says, "What do you mean? I want to be buried there." And they tell him, "Hey, you had a deal. You made a deal. He gave you all the wealth as an inheritance when Yitzchak died, and you gave up the land of Israel and the burial place. And we have documents. Well, where's the document?" They sent Naphtali to go back to run to Egypt to get it. And Hushim ben Dun, Hushim, the son of Dun, who was deaf, he didn't know what was going on. He just knew that this man Esav here is making trouble, and he goes over to him and whacks him and chops off his head, and his head rolls into the cave of Machpelah, and they're able to conclude the the burial properly. Which is, by the way, an interesting idea. There's a deeper aspect of this. Why does Esav's head get to be buried in the cave of Machpelah? Because the head represents his potential. He could have been a righteous person and been on a higher level, as we mentioned, than Yaakov in a certain sense, but he did what he did. The brothers are concerned that maybe now that Yaakov is dead, that maybe he will take revenge on them, but he reassures them, tells them they're going to be fine. And the only thing he asks is that when the Jewish people leave one day, remember me and take me out with you. Don't keep me in Egypt, because the Egyptians will not allow me to be buried outside of the land now. And as a matter of fact, the Egyptians actually put him into a box and put him into the Nile River because they didn't want him to ever leave. Okay. Now, if you look on page 289, the custom is when we finish a Chumash, one of the 5 books, so that we say something very special to that. So here is just to show you portions. This is the Chumash Bereshis, the book of Genesis. Bereshis told us Vayechi. So that's the end. And next week, the following week, we will start Chumash Shemos, the book of Exodus. So if you look at the end of the Chumash, when we read it, we say everyone stands up for the last verse, and we say Chazak, Chazak, v'nis Chazek. May we be strong, and be strengthened to complete many other works and books of Torah. Okay, now. There was a famous rabbi in Israel named Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. He was the dean of a very big yeshiva called the Mira Yeshiva in Israel, which is now one of the largest yeshivas in Israel. And he used to go to Rachel's tomb and pray. And he would say, "Cry for us, Rachel, again. Rachel, cry for us again." Remember, I mentioned to you that Yaakov buried her there because the Jewish people would cry by her graveside, and he would say, "Cry for us again, because we're in exile still. We want to get out of exile." So one of the students asked him, "God told Rachel, don't cry anymore. I'm going to bring the Jewish people back." And in fact, eventually, the second temple was rebuilt. So why are you telling to Rachel that she should cry when God told her not to cry anymore? And his answer was very, very profound. He said, "A father can tell a child, don't cry, but a child can tell a mother, cry." All right? So there's a very beautiful song written by a friend of mine named A.B. Rottenberg, sung by Yaakov Shweki, who was an amazing voice. And I'd like to play that song for you, and I have the words for it for you so you can follow inside. Translated some of them. If you want the words to the song, those of you on Zoom, just call the office and we'll gladly send them out. You want to give them out? Thank you very much. And very beautifully done. And hopefully you'll understand it. It's, again, like I said, a very, very moving song. They're very appropriate for the times we're in, for sure. It's from a tape called Journeys. Journeys is the name of A.B. Rottenberg's English songs. Does everyone have a handout? So in the song, it gives a little background about Rachel, that she gave the symbols to her sister. So if you have any questions on it, you'll ask me afterwards, but I think it should be pretty clear. Can you hear this on Zoom? With the rising sun on her wedding day, she raised her eyes to the heavens, and she thanked Hashem for the man of truth, with whom she will build the nation. But with nightfall came, destiny betrayed, the veil concealing another. Yet a sister's shame, not her shattered dreams, took hold of her heart and her senses. Mama Rachel cried for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? If you raise your sweet voice now instead, the day will come. Mama Rachel cried for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? In a roadside grave, she was laid to rest in solitude forever. But her voice gave hope to the broken hearts of her daughters and sons bound for exile. When her plaintive cry gave divine consent, a challenge to her maker, and the mercy of mere flesh and blood run deeper than yours, our creator. Mama Rachel cried for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? If you raise your sweet voice now instead, the day will come. Mama Rachel cried for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? בזכותך ושובו נמלאו. Now your voice is still as you heed the call of Minikolech Bibechi. It's our Father's will, He who made us all. We ask of you to define it, yet to frighten child of some pain and grief remains for no more and uncertain, linking to the affair that it can't be heard as it cries out to its mother. Mommy, baby, no, don't forget this, oh, now, You raise your sleep voice now is then the day will come. Now that right for us again, won't you shed a tear for your dear children? We will move there, the shadow of me. Physical death, the shadow of me. Very powerful, very powerful. I've heard it, I don't know, hundreds, but tens of times, and it moves me every single time. All right, any comments, thoughts, questions? Yes,
I have a question, Rabbi.
1 second, yeah?
Shimshon,
Yes,
who was Shimshon?
he was from the tribe of Dan, and he was a Nazirite. He refrained from certain things to have a higher level of holiness. But because of, which is a whole longer story about Delilah, he revealed what his secret was of his strength to her, and she told the Plishtim, and because of that, but he was captured, and they couldn't. Initially he told him stuff that wasn't true, and they chained him up, and he broke out. But in the end, he always protected the Jewish people, and in the end, he davened, he prayed that be able to pull the building down, and he did, and he saved them again. Yes, Malka.
With Esav, was the rest of his body buried with the head? Because
No.
aren't we supposed to try to bury the entire body?
Yeah, Esav wasn't Jewish. We didn't have to worry about it, and it was by a Jewish person we would do that. But by Esav, he was making trouble, and Hushim and Dun didn't ask any questions, just not chopped his head off, and that was that. But his body did not merit to be buried in the cave of Machpelah. Yeah.
Besides Dina, did they have any other daughters?
No, not that I know.
But it says in
And it said in the Parsha last week, it said son and daughters, it had plural daughters.
I don't know what you're talking about, so you have to show me inside. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Question.
Hi, Chen.
Hi. Hi. Why a wolf for Binyamin? It's such a negative like symbol.
I don't recall. I'd have to look.
I mean, I think it was because of what happened in Melachim, like in the future about what but it's just so negative, you know? Just
Well,
seems like
you don't like wolves?
no, definitely not.
I don't know if the article brings it down.
It's also like taking away from like Bechira. It's like forecasting prediction, like what's gonna happen in the future. And like maybe they won't actually act that way.
Well, that what you're bringing up is a very important idea. Prophecy doesn't mean that it has to come out the way it appears. And we see this several times, that sometimes there's a prophetic vision, but that can play itself out in different ways. And that's up to our free choice and our prayer. So it can be
But this
like
is Yaakov's bracha to Binyamin, like before he like it's just weird.
again, I'd have to do a little research, which I didn't do on Binyamin per se. But the point that I'm making is that
Yeah.
there are many interpretations of how things what it says here is that they were fierce warriors, like a wolf can be.
Right.
And Shaul, who's from Binyamin, defeated Moav, Edom, and Philistia. So it's not just one particular story. There are many ways that a prophecy can manifest itself. So, as it's like I said, the article brings these other things about Binyamin, which are complementary in the ability they have to fight.
Okay. Right, because like if I look at a wolf as only negative, that's not true. There's some,
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Want
Thank
the wolf
you.
at the time, put it that way. Yes,
On page 259 on number 15.
259. Number 15.
That in the last sentence, all the people, his son and daughter, numbered.
Yeah, well, this has to do with what is.
Not this one.
It's not just Dinah. It's no, that's not. These are the children of Leah. Leah didn't have. It's talking about Leah. These are the sons of Leah whom she bore to Yaakov, and in addition to Dinah, his daughter. All the people, his sons and his daughters, numbered 30. What?
It's in daughters.
Yeah, it's talking about all of, but that's nothing to do with Dinah. That has to do with Leah. Yes.
It says she had more than one.
Not that I know, but there's a medrash that says that the tribes had daughters that they married, the twins. But that's yeah.
With reference to your explanation that rolling into the burial tomb and it was allowed to stay because of the potential that he might have been to his people.
Right.
Can you speak to the notion or belief of the Jews at judgment after death will take an accounting based on who they are and who they might have been?
Yeah, that's an excellent question and a complicated one. The question, just for those who didn't hear, was Shali wanted to know, when Hashem judges us, are we judged based upon what our potential was? And the answer is yes, definitely. As a matter of fact, that's why by Avrohom it says Avrohom, that the Avrohom in this world and the one in heaven was the same, because he had reached his full potential. And each person's potential is going to be different based upon the circumstances of their lives, based upon their choices, based upon many, many things. But yes, that's there's a beautiful story from the great Hasidic master, the Rebbe Zisha, who told his followers, God is not going to say to me, why weren't you do acts of loving kindness like Avram? Why weren't you as learned as the great Rabbi Akiva? Why weren't you like this one in history? God's going to say, Zisha, why weren't you Zisha? Why weren't you the best you could be? And that's what our goal is in this world while we're here to try to see whatever we can do to be the best that we can be. And that's comforting and scary at the same time. It's comforting because why? We don't have to
Yeah,
look,
because we're not compared to Moshe Rabbeinu.
we don't have to compare ourselves to Moshe. But it's scary because we have to really, we can do a lot more than we think we can, and we can accomplish a lot more, and we have to make sure that we push ourselves to do that.
Was it a head fairy?
I wasn't there, I can't tell you.
I know you weren't there.
Yeah,
but
no.
you were-
I don't know. It says that it was in the cave of Machpelah. That's what it says, that it rolled into the head.
So that means his skull is out?
I don't know. I don't see it. I don't know. Yeah.
So last class you mentioned that we don't hear the tzaddikim, like the really righteous, Alice mentioned as much in stories of the Torah. Like,
What do you mean?
like you said, there's not a lot about Yitzchak, right?
Oh, Yitzchak is but Yaakov and Avram have dominant roles. That's for
Right.
sure.
So did I miss something? Maybe I'm not saying it correctly. Like unless if it's a real tzaddik without, like we only hear things that we're learning from, but if it's a tzaddik that didn't do anything questionable, there's not going to be as much written about them.
No, not necessarily. What Hashem reveals, what He wants us to reveal, what He wants us to learn from them. That's all. Thoughts, comments, questions? Anybody? All right. Have a great week, and in the merit of the Parsha, we deal with the tomb of Rachel. That may she daven for us to Hashem again, and we merit to have the final redemption soon.
Amen.
All right,
You sound much better, by the way. I'm glad
Hashem
from
should-
last week.
Thank you. Hashem should continue. Baruch Hashem. And your husband, Erwin's soul should have an aliyah. Take care, team.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, take care. All the best.
Yeah. Thanks, Rabbi Czapnik. Have a good week.
Stay safe, everyone.
You too.
Okay.
One second. Yeah.